Atletico Ottawa has finally made it official, even though we did some sleuthing a couple weeks ago with the pitcher in Mexico, but it's confirmed, gentlemen, that Amir Didic has now signed with Atletico Ottawa. Ollie, does this signing change the balance of power in the CPL? I mean, is Atletico now, in your opinion, if you're doing your way too early power rankings, number one?
We know where he stands.
I'll leave those. I'll leave the power rankings to Wheels. That's his domain. Hopefully, they'll be coming up soon. The balance of power has definitely changed. There's no question about that. Do they have the best roster in the league? I still think it's Cavalry by a hair. But the fact that I did have to think about it when I was thinking about what my answer was going to be for this question shows you how far Atletico Ottawa has come. They missed the playoffs last season. Look back to opening day last season or whenever you want, and compare the lineup that they put out then to what they're going to be able to put out in however many days' time it is until kickoff here. Like it's a different team. It's a completely different world for Atletico Ottawa this season. I think last year, obviously, they tried to get a bit younger, tried to bring in maybe different types of players to change the style of play a little bit. But on paper, from the start of the season, you always just felt it was missing a bit of the quality that they'd had in 2022. Not the case this year. Proven top CPL players all over the pitch. I still think Cavalry, just having been through 2-3 years of building now, are a bit more balanced. That squad, that roster is incredibly strong and built exactly the way Tommy Wooden Jr. wants to play. But there's no question that on paper, Atletico Ottawa should be right up there competing with them, I think, in the CPL this season.
You agree with that, Jordo?
Andy, I know you're the host and you do an amazing job, but I just have to ask Oliver Platt if he's changed his top five now and taken Alaman Cisse out, and is going to be a clean sweep that Wheels asked for. And are you putting Amir Didic in the five now? Is it all the off season of 2024? We're going into the 2024 season. Is it all Ottawa now?
I think I have to put Didic in, but I can't drop Cisse out. He was my number 3. I think DeBrienne.
So who you cutting? DeBrienne at number 5.
He was number 5, so he has to be.
Oh,
so
he's gone.
But it's still 4 out of 5.
Okay. Look, on paper, I'm going to be singing this song for a while. On paper, this team is great, but as a unit, we still don't know. I still think, I mentioned the other day in the back that you're going to miss Espejo, who's a proven player in this league, and Acosta, who did many roles, also played in the midfield, but was just a leader in the locker room and on the pitch. They're gone, but you're getting that in Amir Didic, for me, is definitely in year 6, still the best or top 3 center backs that have played in this league. His size, the way he scores goals, his leadership, his passing ability, all make him such a threat. I think when you're looking at the Atletico Ottawa side, probably the only deficiency or light area is up top. Toucan Sammy Salter, who I've gotten scratches from and gotten into a few words with as well. Is he that striker that's going to go double digits? I don't know. I just don't know. Balou Tabla will help, but even in his best season in 2022, he was a guy from outside the box to dribble, to create goals, but he's not someone straight down the middle. So I think this team will be better. Obviously, you could say playoff bound or around there, but are they going to be a team that is winning both the Shield and the Canadian Premier League, the playoffs as well? I don't know. I can't really say that yet.
A little wishy-washy answer. Bring it home, Wheels.
Our nation capital has put an exclamation point on what an off season is all about. The biggest off season in Canadian Premier League history. And I don't know if it's even particularly close. This is what fans love. They love the rumor mill. They love big signings. They love player movement. And this brings all kinds of excitement to Atletico Ottawa ahead of this season. A team that's embraced their fan base. They're building something very special that harkens back to the days of the Fury and beyond that. Like, this is a really good football market. Now they have something to really be excited about. With these signings, it brings expectations. Like, look, they bring in Yesley, Mauricio, Sissoko, Torres, Debrienne, Dos Santos, Tabla, and Twardick. That is a ridiculous haul for an offseason. Ridiculous haul. And it seems like Amir Didic was a missing link. Like, center back was a position. How are they going to replace Espejo? Didic comes in, excellent on set pieces. He's got the requisite experience. It's an absolute coup. But do they still have the best squad in the Canadian Premier League? And you have to say no at this point because all roads run through Hamilton when it comes to the Canadian Premier League. We cannot be this foolish. We try to underestimate and underappreciate just how good and how deep that Forge squad is and how they can beat you in different ways. They bring back Cisse. They bring in a couple of other intriguing international players as well. And Smirniotis and company get that right more times than not. Look, I'm impressed by what Ottawa has done. They are the buzz team in a lot of people's opinion. They do have the best squad in the Canadian Premier League. But the way that Forge plays perennially, how good Cavalry was last season, there's a lot of room to make up for a team that didn't even make the playoffs last season in the CPL.
Yeah. When it comes to, and this question is not so much about Pacific, although if you're Pacific, given what's happened to you the last few years, you're either feeling pretty proud that your scouting is that good that people want to come after your players, or you're feeling picked on because your players keep getting taken from you. Let me preface this by also saying Toronto FC got in on the action when they took Lucas McNaughton and Caden Chung. So now this leads into my question here. What would you consider the bigger, double swoop here? Forge signing Hajabrapor and Campbell back in January 2022, remember, both from Pacific, or now this Atletico signing of Aparicio and Didic this year, also both being plucked from Pacific. Jordo?
First off, whenever you say and you talk about the 2021 final, I remember the day I almost died and froze my little chocolate buns off with you, Wheels, and Ollie. Coldest day ever. I said, yeah, I want to do media. Yeah, I want to talk with Wheels, and I want Ollie to be my friend. And I literally went home like this, drove all the way to Mississauga like this, with the heater on full blast, freezing. So when you're talking about Hajabrapor and scoring and leaving, sorry, this is what all comes back, and this is how I'm dealing with my PTSD. Anyways, the bigger move has to be these two going to Atlético Ottawa. I will always feel like it was weird to win a title with Pacific, and then their two players, and Hajabrapor and Camel, going to Forge. It will always, it won't really make sense, even though it does when you want to play for a better team. But winning a title, you would always want to just maybe try to do it again and do the two-peat. But you're looking at Aparicio and Didic at 28 and 29. They're proven. These guys could go on to another league, and maybe that's not the MLS, but it could definitely be in clubs in Europe, could be on a smaller scale, Scandinavia. They're that good, right? But they're deciding to go together, partner up, and go to Atletico Ottawa, the nation's capital, because they feel like they can go and win something. I think basically just performing on, or just commenting on the age is why I'm going to say that. With Campbell and Hajabrapor, when they went being 21 and 22, they still had a lot to do, even though they were talented, and even though Terran Campbell was leaving a season in 2021 with 11 goals. I just think the quality of Aparicio and the quality of Didic are far greater than Hajabrapor and Campbell when they came to Forge.
How are you feeling, Ollie?
Well, firstly, I'm trying to load up this press release so I can actually read off of it, because as much as Didic and Aparicio, I agree with Jordan, and maybe the more proven, established players at this point, there has never been a CPL story, in my opinion, that compared to Hajabrapor and Campbell going to Forge weeks after they had beaten Forge in the Canadian Premier League final. It was absolutely wild, and the reason I mentioned this press release is because this is how it came out. It was an article put out by Pacific that was titled "Thank You, Terran Campbell and Alessandro Hajabrapor," and the first 6 or 7 paragraphs are just thanks guys, amazing service. They're moving on now to whatever. It didn't really state anything. Going through their accomplishments, they leave as champions. And then there's some quotes from Pamadou Kar at the end of the story, including, "I had bigger hopes for those two, to be honest. We wish them the best of luck with their move to Forge and what makes them happy. And, if you can't beat them, sign them." It was absolutely crazy the way this come out. To the point where I was reading this and I was like Forge in the 9th paragraph. I had to text him to check, am I reading this right?
How did they not catch that quote by the head coach, which is hilarious?
I don't know. It was an incredible situation. I'll never forget how that story unfolded and some of the things that were said between the two clubs. That was as fierce a rivalry, I think, over those couple of months between the final and this transfer as we've had in this league. So that was crazy, and I don't think it will be topped for a long time.
I agree. I remember being thoroughly shocked by everything that went down. 100%. I don't know where you are, Wheels, with what you consider the biggest double swoop.
Yeah, I mean, if if Didic and Aparicio land a Canadian Premier League title in our nation's capital, then maybe that can rival what the Hijab Rapport Campbell move meant, because I think it's a little bit of recency bias to say that that this latest double swoop is the bigger one from Pacific, because if you remember, Terran Campbell had 11 goals, 5 assists that season, and he's carried on. He's the greatest goal or the biggest goal scorer in Canadian Premier League history. Hijab Rapport was coming off a player where he won the under-21 player of the year and scored the match winner in the Canadian Premier League final that year. And guess what happened? Ford just picked them both up, and they've gone on to win the last two. Like, those are immediate results. When Amir Didic moved to a team that just won a Canadian Premier League title, Pacific didn't win. Pacific didn't get back there. And quite frankly, Aparicio and Didic are coming from a team that was dysfunctional. Like, it was just, it didn't live up to standards last season. It's, you know, it's not on those two players specifically, but they were part of it. You know, when you get two players that from a team that just won it all, that has to be considered the bigger move. So Forge getting those two players in 2021 takes it.
Crazy. It's like, bye, Felicia. They're just going to other teams.
Love it. Love it.
All right. I'm going to get you guys, you're just each, because I know we're going to be talking a lot about this in the week that's going to be leading up to the CPL kickoff April 13th. So we all agree, we've been talking about this at Atlético Ottawa, massive offseason, a lot of top stories coming out of the nation's capital for the 2024 CPL offseason. But what do you think are other top storylines? Like, what are things that you've been following in this offseason that is a storyline you want to see perhaps unfold throughout the regular season? Wheels, will start with you. What is a storyline that you think is pretty big outside of all the Atlético Ottawa signings?
Aside from what's gone on off the field in Forge and what could continue, and, you know, trying to project when they will stumble, I'm going to leave that one alone for now. But I'm looking to the East Coast. I'm looking at the Halifax Wanderers, arguably the most popular side in the Canadian Premier League. A third place finish last season, a team on the rise, a team that impressed, more wins, more goals, fewer conceded than ever in the young history of that club. Are they for real? Or are Halifax Wanderers a one-hit wonder? Patrice Geyser brought in a completely new style of play. I don't think people were ready for it. I think that it required some adjustment. They went in and took a gamble on some experienced players. They found some other very ones. Massimo Ferrin, Dan Nimick led the way there. But have they done enough this offseason to keep that incredibly high standard when other teams across the Canadian Premier League have most certainly improved? I think there's going to be lots of parity in this league. And the question is, are the Wanderers good enough to take a step forward? Because that's what's going to be the expectation this season. I do think that they do have a couple of glaring weaknesses at certain positions. So all the pressure is going to be on them to keep this project moving forward. Let's see if they can live up to the high standards that they set last season. They learned a lot through their playoff loss. They lose João Morelli, and he was such an important player because when he inevitably went out through injury, they weren't the same team. So I do think there are some questions about whether they can repeat the really great success that they had last season.
Ollie, what's your storyline?
My storyline is what are Pacific, because I'm not sure anyone really knows at this point based on, you know, the two sides of last season. And I see a lot of people, you know, when they're making their predictions for this league, projecting who's going to be in the playoffs, whether it's media, whether it's fans. It seems to be kind of a popular pick right now to, if you want to bring someone into the playoffs who wasn't in it last year, Pacific might be the team that's going out for a lot of people. And that's based on the way they finished the second half of the campaign. I know they made a decent little run of it in the playoffs and ground out a couple of results, but this wasn't the same team in the second half of the season. And they've got to now prove that they can get back to where they were, or at least close to it. Now, at the same time, they did start the season 7-3-1, and at that point, everyone was saying this team is running away with the regular season title. So you can't just throw that out. They are capable of that when they're at their best, but it's going to be a very different looking team. Obviously, Aparicio and Didic gone, as we've covered. This has been a club that has typically been pretty Canadian, particularly young Canadian players. Again, as we just said, the number of young Canadians they've moved on is pretty remarkable. This season, I think there's going to be a real reliance on some of the international guys they've brought in, and Dom, coming in to replace Didic at centre back. Saloof needs to have a big year on that left hand side, show more consistency. than he did last season. And then there's Rion Moore up front as well, which was a big problem for them, was the lack of a real proven centre forward last season, or one who performed to that level at least. So those players who are coming in, as well as Saluf returning, I think are going to have big roles to play.
Jordo.
I'm excited for this year because there's a lot of storylines, a lot of things to get into. But I think one that people haven't really talked about is 2023, Calgary won the season by 13 points. And on paper, they are a better team going into this 2024 season than they were last year. You're looking at big names for their side. You're thinking they're moving. Andy, by the way, your little dress, the train, Wheels, you look good, and you hosted the heck out of the award show. Ollie, you're always gorgeous. But last year, I'm like, this is it for Klopp. This is it for Moosey. They're gone, okay? Calgary in some way are going to have to go and replace those guys. They're back. 2024, they are back. They have
to see the playoffs
for another season to go. They are coming. Moosey, Shom, Akio, Camargo, all these guys are back. And then they've added Warcheski, Gutierrez, Lucas Diaz. And I don't believe they're done. I feel like there's going to be another missing piece as well up top that they're going to add. But look, this team is better, and it's almost like people are talking about Atlético Ottawa. A lot of people are talking about Halifax. Like, what is York going to be? Forge, and the players they've signed. But I want to say, looking at it right now, this is a shoo-in to be a top team, and maybe a team to go and win it all and win the league. Because why couldn't they be? If 13 points last season, they have to be the front runners to go on and do it again this season.
But that's the question, Jordo. Cavalry, to me, I'm going to start calling them the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? Like, that's great what you can do in the regular season.
Don't do that.
What can you do for me in the playoffs? Sorry, bro. It's truth. Sorry.
Woo!
Andy Petrillo.
I'm just saying, every year, until they finally win the cup, I do believe that they have what it takes to win it. But until they win it, you're right, though. Like, this is going to be the storyline.
They get to finals.
By the way, they almost did it. Remember, they lost to Forge and then had to go another route. They didn't also gain the automatic qualification into the final. And last year, how the whole playoffs, the way it's changed. I'm just saying, until the day they win it all, like I'm talking about even like the playoff final, because I know some people think win it all means the regular season. I'm talking win it all. Then I think this is always going to be the storyline for Cavalry.
Double.
In the offseason.
Andy's putting Tommy in the hot seat already. I love
it. She wants perfection. Not a good season. Not one of the best seasons.
Yeah.
But I'm just, and you know what though? I say that because I believe they can do it. I believe they can do it. It's because there's a lot of love in my heart that I'm like, do it, right? Like I want to see it. Anyways, I'm just going to throw in a quick little York United, speaking of a change in the playoffs, they snuck in that fifth spot. They actually beat out Atletico Ottawa by 2 points to get that wild card spot to go on in. They have new ownership. This is, a team where we know there was some off-field things that were happening. A lot of players even alluded to it. So I wonder with new ownership, and crack the whip a little bit, and we'll see what York United can do in the regular season. Really excited to see that.